Mitchell Zuckoff, Fall and Rise, The Story of 9/11. Fall and Rise. The Story of 9/11 is a riveting account of the unimaginable attacks that shook the world on September 11, 2001. This summary delves into the origins of the terrorist plot, meticulously planned by Osama bin Laden and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and its tragic execution. It captures pivotal moments and key players, from the experiences of civilians and first responders to the miscommunications and missteps within government and military organizations. Through the harrowing stories of survival, heroism, and loss, gain a deeper understanding of one of the most devastating days in modern history.
Unveiling 9/11 Attacks Genesis. The September 11th attacks were meticulously planned over the years, led by Osama bin Laden and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. The plane's operation was the basis for the attacks, which involved recruiting individuals knowledgeable in Western culture and language, among other skills. These individuals, including Tactical Commander Mohammed Atta, carried out extensive flight training and blended into American society while diligently studying routines of airport security and airline crews. The attack on American soil was decided by Atta in the latter half of 2001, and executed to devastating effect. Unraveling the genesis of the September 11th attacks, we find ourselves in 1998, when Osama bin Laden declared war on the United States through a fatwa, a religious decree. Although bin Laden was previously on U.S. intelligence agencies' watch list due to activities in Yemen and Somalia, a large-scale terrorist attack was unfathomable for most at that time. The 9/11 attacks were an outcome of strategic and comprehensive planning. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the attack's chief architect, initially imagined hijacking 10 planes and simultaneously targeting both coastlines. After bin Laden approved a more simplified version of the plane's operation in 1999, Mohammed sought recruits who spoke English, were familiar with Western culture, and could enter the United States through valid travel visas. Mohammed Atta, an Egyptian al-Qaeda recruit studying in Germany, was entrusted as the plane's operations tactical commander. Atta and his cohorts embraced Western attire and eventually traveled to Florida in 2000 for pilot training. Meanwhile, bin Laden personally selected 16 additional operatives. Among them, one served as the fourth pilot, while the others were responsible for overpowering passengers and crews on the targeted flights. Entering the United States in 2001, they integrated themselves into American society. As time passed, bin Laden grew increasingly impatient for the operation to commence. However, Atta was focused on understanding airport security and flight crew protocols. Ultimately, he selected the second Tuesday in September for the infamous attacks, though the choice's underlying significance remains unknown. Once the date solidified, Atta's operatives made calculated arrangements, securing plane tickets and motel rooms in Boston, Newark, and Washington, D.C. On September 10, they readied themselves for the final act that would forever change history. Speed, the 9/11 attacks backbone. On September 11, 2001, 45-year-old Betty Ong, a 14-year flight attendant veteran, prepared for her routine trip from Boston to Los Angeles, completely unaware of the tragic events that were about to unfold. Speed and coordination were crucial to the terrorists' plan, ensuring that the world remained unaware and unprepared for the events that were about to transpire. American Airlines Flight 11, piloted by Betty Ong, set off at 7:59 a.m., unknowingly accompanied by 10 other crew members, 81 passengers, and a group of terrorists led by Mohammed Atta. Just 20 minutes into the journey, Atta's group started their hostile takeover of the aircraft. Betty, quick to realize the danger, reached out to American Airlines' reservation line, providing vital details about the hijacked cockpit, a stabbed business-class passenger, and the use of mace on the remaining passengers and crew. As the terrifying revelation began to unfold, United Flight 175 and American Flight 77 took off from Boston and Washington, each carrying their own set of crew, passengers, and hijackers. Unlike the passengers and crew aboard Flight 11, no one aboard United 175 or American 77 knew what was happening on the initial hijacked flight. The terrorists relied heavily on the element of speed. The swiftness of the attacks left the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, airlines, and military overwhelmed with confusing and conflicting information, making it nearly impossible for them to respond effectively. The nature of the hijackings further contributed to the confusion. A scenario where the hijackers themselves pilot the planes had never been considered. The last plane to depart that fateful morning, United Flight 93, carried 33 passengers, 7 crew members, and 4 hijackers, bound for San Francisco from Newark. By the time of its departure at 8:42 a.m., word had spread about the first 2 hijackings. Only minutes later, at 8:46 a.m., American Flight 11 collided with the North Tower of the World Trade Center in a devastating crash, unveiling the full extent of the terrorists' meticulous plan. The 9/11 attacks changed the course of modern history, underscoring the importance of speed and coordination in executing such operations. Ultimately, these events reshaped global security and the aviation industry forever. Hindered military response. On September 11, Major Kevin Nasipany, the Mission Control Commander at the Northeast Air Defense Sector, NEADS, was preoccupied with a training exercise. However, his plan for the day changed when his team had to address a real-world emergency. Miscommunication and a lack of information led to a delayed military response to the attacks. As air traffic controllers at Boston Center lost contact with American Flight 11, they initially believed it was a technical malfunction. But after hearing a suspicious transmission, they deduced the plane had been hijacked. During the next several minutes, Boston Control tried to communicate with the pilots, assuming a traditional hijacking situation. At 8:34 a.m., they sought military aid, bypassing normal channels and calling bases directly. This connected them with Major Nasipany's NEADS post. He quickly obtained permission to launch 2 F-15 fighter jets from Otis Air National Guard Base. However, the challenge now was accurately directing the fighter jets to the hijacked plane. Flight 11's disabled transponder made this difficult. Moreover, NEADS' radar system differed from the Federal Aviation Administration's, FAA, causing confusion and misinterpretation of information. When Flight 11 hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 8:46 a.m., Major Nasipany found out about the crash through a CNN news report. Still unaware of the other hijacked planes, the 2 fighter jets continued their futile search for a plane that no longer existed. The miscommunication and lack of effective information sharing between the FAA and NEADS led to an untimely response to the tragic events of September 11. Confusion in the Twin Towers. Amidst the chaos of 9/11, occupants of the Twin Towers received mixed information on how to respond to the attacks. At 8:46 a.m., American Flight 11 hit the North Tower, trapping over 1,300 people on the 92nd floor and above. Stan Premnath, in the South Tower, experienced conflicting directives during the emergency. Rescuers struggled to reach trapped victims as the stairwells were blocked. Although Stan survived, the attacks claimed the lives of significant numbers on American Flight 11, United Flight 175, and the World Trade Center area. The moment American Flight 11 struck the North Tower at the World Trade Center, around 17,000 people were plunged into chaos. The crash instantly killed everyone on the plane and an unknown number in the tower while simultaneously blocking all 3 emergency stairwells. Approximately 1,355 individuals on the 92nd floor and higher found themselves trapped in a dire situation. Those inside the towers encountered conflicting information regarding the attacks. For example, Guyanese immigrant Stan Premnath, working on the South Tower's 81st floor, was initially unaware of the North Tower explosion. As he attempted to evacuate alongside temporary worker Deli Soriano, a security guard mistakenly informed them that the emergency didn't affect their tower, suggesting they return to their office. Unfortunately, due to increasing panic and desperation, many trapped individuals dialed 911 for assistance, overwhelming the emergency lines. Victims were assured that help was on its way even though the smoke and flames were gradually engulfing them. The blocked stairwells prevented any means of escape, and many broke windows to access fresh air, eventually falling or jumping to their deaths. Stan eventually returned to his workspace, where a Chicago colleague frantically called him, urging him to evacuate. Dismissing her warning, he continued to work until he spotted United Flight 175 flying rapidly toward him. He took cover under his desk only seconds before the plane collided with the South Tower. Astonishingly, Stan survived the impact. The immense destruction was a daunting sight as Stan pushed forward through the rubble. A glimmer of light caught his attention, revealing fellow survivor Brian Clark. The two strangers became brothers for life as they navigated their way to safety. Though Stan and Brian managed to escape unscathed, the 9/11 attacks resulted in numerous tragic losses. In the World Trade Center area alone, 2,606 lives were lost, in addition to the passengers of American Flight 11 and United Flight 175. Pentagon under siege. As chaos unfolded in New York City on September 11, 2001, Washington, D.C. became the next target for terrorists. Navy Dr. Dave Tarantino watched live as the second plane hit the South Tower and immediately suspected Osama bin Laden's involvement. He was completely unaware that American Airlines Flight 77, experiencing unauthorized turns and a lost transponder signal, was on course for the Pentagon. Uninformed about the hijackings, Indianapolis air traffic controllers presumed a mechanical failure on Flight 77 as it flew undetected for 36 minutes. At 9:32 a.m., the plane reappeared on radar at Dulles Airport. Langley Air Force Base scrambled two F-16s, mistakenly sending them out to sea due to lacking specific instructions. At 9:37 a.m., Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon, killing everyone on board and dozens of Pentagon workers. Amidst the chaos, Tarantino utilized his combat medical training to aid in evacuating survivors, ultimately saving hundreds of lives. At 9:42 a.m., the FAA grounded all flights, except for United Flight 93, which continued to be a threat to America's security. Heroism amidst 9/11 chaos. In the face of catastrophe on September 11, first responders like firefighters, paramedics, and police officers showed immense courage, risking their lives to save others. Hindered by insurmountable odds and faltering communication, their selflessness resonates as a reminder of heroism in action. On September 11, 2001, when the twin towers of the World Trade Center were struck, thousands fled from the disaster, scrambling towards safety. However, first responders, firefighters, paramedics, and police officers, fearlessly charged into the nightmarish scene, determined to save as many lives as they could. Their unwavering bravery led to many of them losing their own lives when the buildings eventually fell. Firefighters had long dreaded the possibility of a high-rise fire in New York. As Fire Department of New York Deputy Chief Vincent Dunn had admitted in 1999, extinguishing a fire in a skyscraper's open-floor area would be nearly impossible due to the challenges of pumping water to such heights. Nevertheless, when the day came, they were determined to conquer the insurmountable odds and rescue trapped civilians. The thousands of gallons of jet fuel, providing a continuous ignition point, only made their mission more daunting. Despite the grim circumstances, rescue personnel valiantly entered the North Tower and then the South Tower, seeking out passable stairwells to lead countless people to safety. But at 9:59 a.m., less than an hour after United Flight 175 had crashed into it, the South Tower crumbled, taking the lives of everyone still inside, including emergency responders and approximately 619 individuals trapped on or above the 77th floor. Communication breakdowns and a growing fear of the North Tower's imminent collapse compounded the already chaotic conditions. FDNY Chief Joe Pfeiffer issued an evacuation order for firefighters in the North Tower, but due to unreliable handheld radios, many never received the message. They had to rely on their own judgment. Captain J. Jonas of Ladder Company 6 was one of those fearless firefighters, leading his team in Stairwell B when the South Tower collapsed. Recognizing the severity of the situation, Jonas made the call to evacuate. As they descended, they encountered Josephine Harris, a 59-year-old woman struggling to make her way down the stairs. The men of Ladder 6 vowed to see her to safety, adjusting their pace to accommodate her injury even as their instincts urged them to flee. When the North Tower fell at 10:38 a.m., Jonas, Harris, and the rest of Ladder 6 were on the 4th floor. Miraculously, they all survived, trapped within the remains of Stairwell B. A few hours later, they emerged from the rubble, realizing that if they had been just a few floors higher or lower, they would have perished. In the aftermath, Harris was made an honorary member of Ladder 6, dubbed their guardian angel. In the face of insurmountable odds, the first responders of 9/11 displayed unparalleled courage and selflessness, a testament to the heroic actions that emerged from the direst of circumstances.
This summary of Fall and Rise. The story of 9/11 takes you on a poignant journey through the terrible events that unfolded on September 11, 2001, revealing the intricate web of planning and coordination by terrorists, the struggles of those trapped in the World Trade Center, the actions of first responders in the face of insurmountable odds, and the limitations of government and military agencies in the midst of a chaotic crisis. The book leaves us with a profound acknowledgement of the tragic loss of life and a sense of admiration for the bravery and resilience displayed by ordinary people and heroic professionals alike. It serves as a powerful reminder of the deep-seated consequences of terrorism and the inherent strength of humanity,